Hey folks, Elio here, and welcome to another video playing the Ultra Trading Card game. This time I'm playing an Auraq build that may not be the most powerful way to play Auraq, but it's definitely one of the funnest. The core of this deck is around getting a quick Hydra. Sometimes we can sneak one in with Auraq, and sometimes we can sneak one in with Mind Hypothesis, which can sometimes act as having 3 more copies of Hydra, and a Hydra put into play with Mind Apo will stick around due to Eternal. But more than that, we're running lots of different cards to help accelerate an early drawn or resupplied Hydra. Most of these are through discount mechanics, most of which also add counters to Auraq, but we also have Twinkle Twinkle and additional ramp in Mighty Djinn. In total, we have 15 different cards to discount Hydra by 1, and if we play 2 of them by turn 2, then we can be set up for a day 3 natural Hydra. We also have spell discount in 2 copies of Studious Disciple, who can help bring out an early Mind Apo. Past that, most of our plan is just playing characters that can set up Auraq counters quickly. Trickster is great for this, and a unique Trickster gets us cheap card draw or resupply effects from both hand and reserve. Esmeralda similarly digs us to useful spells, and our unique Esmeralda also resupplies on both sides while also interacting with our opponent. The last 3 characters just form different levels of a decent body with nice utility effects. Hathor, right now, feels like the weakest card in the deck, but its body is formidable on the front side. Our last character, Asmodeus, does not put counters on Auraq, but it is probably the best common that we can run to hit with either Auraq or with Mind Apo. Its anchor roll means that it stays in play 2 rounds on Mind Apo, and otherwise it's an 8-power character, which is great value for the first Mind Apo character. When you're looking to put together uniques for this deck, the things that I would value would be in this order. First, uniques with discount effects that do not normally have them. This can up your count from 15 to something higher, and just get you more quality cards in the deck. Next is uniques with discount effect or ramp effect that normally only come on the rare. This lets you free up a rare slot to use on something else. Finally, uniques that add counters to Auraq with good abilities. Ideally, these are ones that are on cards that you would not already be playing. Esmeralda, you do generally want to play, but in a pinch, just having a solid Auraq triggering character is worth it. That's all for the deck tech. Let's jump into some gameplay. Okay, in our first game here against Basira, and we have really what we're trying to do in our opening hand. We have 2 discount characters plus a Hydra, which makes our choices pretty easy. We're not going to think about this too much. We're doing what our deck is meant to do, and we're going to try to drop a day 3 Hydra. We will be going first. The order of how we play these doesn't matter a whole ton. If they're going to be able to stop us in one of these lanes, they're probably going to be able to stop us. So we open up Martingale on left, they open up Tiny Djinn. We try to take the right lane with Scald, and they do a helping hand to both prevent us from advancing on the left lane, as well as to ramp them themselves immediately. We go ahead and draw Studious Disciple and Lyra Scald. I'd rather have the redundant discount effect for Hydra, so we'll get rid of the Studious Disciple. And we now have the option of potentially being able to play Scald from hand and reserve, still have 2 discount effects available to us, and be setting ourselves up for a 5 counter play with Hydra giving the 5th counter to Auraq the next turn. However, they do open up with a Haven Bouncer, sabotaging the Lyra Scald, so we'll still be able to have our redundant effect here to make sure we have a turn 3 Hydra, but we're not going to be able to do that with the 5th counter, nor will we be taking both lanes this turn. Still, it's okay. We're 2 lanes to 2 lanes, and because we're first next turn, we get the guaranteed day 3 Hydra. We draw a Asmodeus and a Croupier. The Asmodeus is almost always going to be going back, except in some weird later game situation, because it's the kind of thing we want to hit with Auraq, but not the kind of thing that we necessarily want to play from hand. So we do what we were coming here to do, and we discount with both of our support effects, play the Hydra, let them figure out how they're going to handle it. Hopefully it's not with removal. They do play a unique Bravos Pathfinder. It's 2/3 on its own, but when you put a card in reserve, it gets 2 more counters on it, plus it is seasoned as normal. So that's a little scary because our Hydra, even with its scaling, is going to be losing to this Bravos Pathfinder just putting counters on itself. And on top of that, the Vanguard that they put into reserve is going to remove fleeting from this for, the next turn that it plays it. So it's going to be sticking around for a while, getting bigger and bigger. And they definitely have something now that can fight with our Hydra. They're also going to be having the mana left over to play this bouncer on the left lane. So they will be advancing twice this turn, and we will not be advancing at all. So we're a little bit behind on lanes, but Hydra is still Hydra. It's still going to be continuing to grow. And they don't have a removal effect yet, so unless they draw one with their 2 effects here, we're going to be sticking around. We do draw 2 Mind Apples. We don't need both of those, and we definitely want to play a character this turn to, one, put something on board, but also to get another counter. So next turn, we get our Auraq trigger. They decide not to fight over the Hydra lane, which seems reasonable. And that also means that our croupier is going to have a tougher time fighting over this left lane, but we will go left either way because we want to get the Auraq trigger onto the board. And the resupply or draw effect may hit us something that lets us fight over this lane, which indeed it does, hitting a Twinkle Twinkle, which is such a great draw because it means that even with their Vanguard here, we're putting to sleep this Pathfinder. So we will be double advancing this turn, and we have the Twinkle Twinkle available in our reserve next turn to do the same thing. Fantastic turn for us. We will be double advancing. We've now made up our deficit in the lanes, and things are looking really great for us with us having a ton of power on board, a free spell next turn, Twinkle Twinkle available to us, maybe a Mind Appo. The world is our oyster. We do put back this Ouroboros Trickster. I like the things with more power from this position onward where we have all this mana. And with the Auraq, we actually hit a second Hydra, which is fantastic. Having Hydra in both lanes now, it's going to be very difficult for them to come back from this, even with removal. We want to open with Twinkle Twinkle from the reserve so that it's immune to any sabotage effects. It's the most powerful thing we can do this turn, getting rid of, up to 10 power in water from his side. And we don't want to leave it exposed to sabotage, which came into play because the first card they played did get rid of our croupier instead of the Twinkle Twinkle. A little unfortunate, but things in general are pretty fortunate for us so far this game. We're able to then play the Mighty Djinn following this up so that we continue to win this lane. And maybe they can play another character to advance themselves, but they're not going to be able to block us. So now we are 1 lane away from winning. We've got 2 Hydra in play, and they're going to have a hard time beating us there. That being said, they are starting next turn with a ton of power on the left lane. So if they can remove this Hydra, they could potentially double advance here. So we want to make sure that we push this right lane, especially since with this growing to 8 power on Forest, we will at least be blocking them without any further action on their side. Even if they use a Basira trigger on it, they're going to need to get 2 power over there, which is something that they are aware of. So they open up with the Bouncer to make sure that they are at least winning the left lane. But we need to be conscious that this Hydra may not be enough in the right lane because really the only way they win from this point is by removing it. So we need to play against their outs and not let ourselves lose to a removal spell. With that, we open up with Tanuki, taking away their options from the reserve and forcing them to play out cards from hand to see what's available to them. And they play a unique Vanguard, whose main benefit seems to be that it costs 1 mana less than normal. So they still have the potential mana eruption available to them. But as long as we just play smart here, which we can play both of our characters, but we open with the Mighty Djinn. I think in hindsight, technically, it's better to open with the resupply effect, but there's not much they can do with 2 mana, and even though they did get the removal spell, it's not going to be enough. We are too dominant at this point. We're going to have enough power to win the right lane, and we will take down this game against Hydra in a pretty dominant fashion. All right, game 2 against the Teija, who has been pretty strong in this meta. We do get 2 Asmodeus in hand. As I said before, we generally are pretty quick to put these back into mana, except in weird late game situations. So that kind of leaves us of a choice of really Mind Appo or Cloth Cocoon in terms of what we want to get rid of. We do want to keep these characters in hand, because they can put counters on Auraq, they put things on the board, they interact. So Mind Apo, we don't have any discount effects yet, so it's going to be coming out a lot later. Plus, Teija is a matchup where I can like Cloth Cocoon. There's a lot of powerful anchored effects that, getting a Cloth Cocoon that's well timed can sometimes feel really good. So we'll put back the Mind Apo as the third card, and we'll see how things develop from here. Opponent opens up with a Bountiful Meadow, which gives us an interesting choice where, our initial plan would be to Esmeralda and see what we get with the resupply. But we could Cloth Cocoon and basically pass this turn, get rid of one of their effective mana, and move on from here. This could stop them if they have a Sneezer Shroom in hand, which is often the kind of 1-2 punch that these Teija decks do. And it also stops their mana going forward. That being said, I like building up my own counters on Auraq, and I feel like I'm lacking a little bit of effective cards in hand, and so I'd rather start resupplying and digging to my own game plan while I can. Esmeralda resupplying could also hit a discount effect that would be still allow us to do a turn 3 Hydra. Unfortunately, we do hit Esmeralda. They actually don't have a follow-up with their Bountiful Meadow. Now, I don't want to have results-oriented thinking, so the Cloth Cocoon would have been worse on this turn, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong. But again, I still like the Esmeralda play more for going for our plan A rather than trying to stop their plan A. We draw Scald and Cloth Dancer. Definitely want to keep the Scald. Not only is it good for the normal means, but it also can cycle one of these Esmeraldas and potentially turn into something better. These three all interact in kind of different ways. I am a little wary of the Tanuki because with all the anchor effects, it can sometimes take a while for a card to get put into the reserve for Teija. And I need to be able to play somewhat proactively. So I'd rather give something fleeting at this point than wait for it to get there and get Tanuki'd, especially if there's an awkward sequencing where we don't even get the opportunity to. So we put back the Tanuki and we go and cycle one of these Esmeralda cards. The other option would have been to get rid of the Cloth Cocoon over the Tanuki, and I think that's pretty valid. But we did what we did. Opponent opens up with a Spindle Harvester. We get our unique Esmeralda here, but we'll just play the natural thing, or really the only thing we can at this point, Esmeralda, which luckily does win the right lane. And an opponent's Aloe Vera is going to mean that they have a scary next turn where they got lots of resources and things on board. But we're both actually advancing here, them on Forest and Water on these right and left lane, respectively, and us on Forest and Mountain / Water. So we now have 3 of our 7 lane advances. And while we're not getting, our super early Hydra or anything like that, things are feeling okay. We're also up to 3 counters on Auraq, and this next turn seems likely that we'll be able to get it to 5 counters and maybe hit something big off of it. We do draw 2 Tricksters. I could get rid of the Cloth Cocoon here, but we've already seen one Aloe Vera, which just puts it on my mind, and I want to potentially have it available for future Aloe Veras. So I'll get rid of the regular Trickster here. And really what my thinking is that this turn I can potentially get an Esmeralda out that can hit a ton of different things, since this Esmeralda gives all characters controlled by the opposing player fleeting if I leave up 1 mana. But what we do see happen is Aloe Vera flips this Mana Reaping into reserve. So that leaves me kind of an interesting option. I can obscure the Esmeralda, play a Trickster first, and use that to see what options are available to me, and also make it so they cannot immediately Mana Reaping my Esmeralda and save all their characters. But I actually think that getting rid of their Mana Reaping, which is going to eventually be used on one of our Hydrocanas, is more important than getting rid of their characters. So I actually want to kind of use the Esmeralda as bait for the Mana Reaping, and we don't need to spend this 1 mana immediately. So we play this out, kind of hope that they use the Mana Reaping on it, which they do. So now we're ramped. They don't have one of the removal spells for Hydrocana, and we can actually now use this Lyra Scald to discount one of the 3-drops from our hand, because next turn we'll have 7 mana either way, because of the ramp. And this lets us still get rid of this Aloe Vera from the reserve with the fleeting. We still get 5 counters on Auraq and Kibble. And we also advance on left. So they double advance, we single advance. We're going to end up tied here. But we're set up for the future turns a lot better than if we had sequenced this a little bit differently. Here we get Martingale and Mighty Djinn. It may be time to ditch the Cloth Cocoon, but instead I get rid of the cheaper, lower power thing in the Martingale. We have a lot of mana now, so like we're gonna have lots of plays going forward, and I want to make sure we have high power things, like things that draw or things that have big impact on the board. And our free spell hits a Hydra, not a huge hit, but it will be something that will at least block them on the left lane and give us some power towards advancing on Mountain if we want to start fighting over it. They are fighting for Mountain on the left side, and the 3 power for 2 from the Cloth Dancers is actually really nice for fighting over that. So we'll start with that and see where they go from here. They go right with a Harvesters, which we can still block pretty cheaply with this Trickster, which we'll go ahead and do now, as that will also let us see immediately what our extra card is here, which is an Asmodeus. Not a great flip, but that's fine. They use a rare Harvest, which I really love this card. They flip this, which actually isn't going to help them on the current board. It doesn't help push them on the right. It doesn't help, isn't it enough to win on the left. I'm going to be having cards removed from my reserve, so I'll go ahead and play out my Cloth Dancer on the left to just ensure that I'm winning the left side. But I could have maybe done the Mighty Djinn, but I like having the higher power play available to me in the future, and things kind of go on from here with no impact on the board. But this Kodama, the Spindle Harvesters are going to be sticking around, which is fine. We blocked them on the right, we advanced on left, and we're now not only ahead, but the following turn is going to be a Auraq turn, and they cannot win this turn. The best they can do is get 1 lane away. So feeling good with that. Here we draw an awesome draw. Twinkle Twinkle is going to let us steal some lanes, and we'll also be at 8 mana here if we mana something, which means we can Twinkle Twinkle, discount, and then play Hydra. We can also Twinkle Twinkle, return with Hydra, Twinkle Twinkle again, and maybe double play characters. We have a lot of options available to us. The thing that we definitely want to mana, so we have this as an option, but Cloth Cocoon at this point seems like the least likely thing to be part of our game plan. So we'll ditch that. They play Daughter from reserve. There's a lot of power over here. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go forward with our Twinkle plan. So we'll sleep the Kodama on the left. Idea here is that it opens up a Hydra to probably win this lane. And it's not that much power that's actually sticking around here with the following turn. They do use Inari Unique, which is basically like a Pavarti with more power. So their Daughter gets anchored. They're going to have a lot of power sticking around the next turn. But we now know they're out of mana, and with this discounted Hydra, it's coming in. We're winning the left lane. So not only are we just 1 lane away, and they're going to be 2, but we have a ton of power going into the next lane before we even see what Auraq is flipping. Also, we already got rid of one of their mana reaping, so their ability to deal with it is extremely limited. No matter what we flip with this Auraq, we're in a fantastic position. We can get rid of the least powerful thing here in the Trickster. And with Auraq, we flip Mind Apo. We have a lot of great flips in this deck. We have Hydra, we have Asmodeus, and we have Mind Apo, and things like Croupier are pretty good as well. So, the odds that we hit something good are pretty decent, better than 1 in 4. But Mind Apo is one of the best things that we can hit. So super excited to see that pop up. And with that, we actually get, a croupier and a scald. Looking at these, one of the ways that we lose this is, they remove the Hydra and then do some other powerful things. But what we can get here is really 7 water. So while we're both fighting over water on the right, we'll keep those, play them both right. So now they need to remove the Hydra. They need to find a way to overcome a 3 water deficit on the right, which Inari plus removal will kind of be enough to do that, but then that leaves us open to actually win the left lane with a Mighty Djinn. So in most situations, we win from here. So we're going to try to play things slow. We can Hathor to return the Ouroboros Trickster to our hand to just have a 1-mana play that advances Forest on left in case the Hydra Cannon gets removed. Lets us see more cards in our deck. We draw Twinkle Twinkle, which is nail in the coffin. There's really no way that they can win from here. But this play also, just let us stall and see what they're up to. We want to save this Twinkle Twinkle because we don't know what the best thing to remove is yet. So we'll open up with the Tanuki, which at least removes some of their options. Earlier on, it may have been better to keep the Tanuki around so that, if they do harvest, we at least get to immediately remove one of their impactful spells. But because it's doing 2 resupplies in case they somehow hit 2 amazing god uniques that would cause us to lose, we can now remove that, keep our 2 Twinkle Twinkles around, and they actually follow up with a sick play that we almost missed. That they anchored our Hydra with the Inari, and now they get to Cloth Cocoon it. It's an awesome play. I really love it. Like, kudos to the opponent. Unfortunately, not nearly enough to stop the powerhouse that is the Auraq power right now, but it was cool. We get to Twinkle Twinkle their stuff, and even though they had their removal plus Inari play, it's not nearly enough. We're double advancing this turn. We don't even have to use our second Twinkle Twinkle. We win by a landslide. Okay, those are the games. Thank you for watching. This has been my most played deck, both kind of pre and post Robin Hood nerf. I mostly am playing it on unranked because I just like having fun with it, and I just really have a blast playing it. But it has a 65% win rate across 40 games, so it's not necessarily going to be a tournament deck that is going to be tearing up the meta, but it's a lot of fun, and it can hold its own weight against a casual environment at your local game store. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing if you like the content. It helps me know that it's worth making, and also helps me maybe get to the kind of partner status at 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Elio. Have a good one.